Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications.
I hope you're doing well today. It is May the 18th. And as always, if you have a question about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, please feel free to post your question as a comment like most of you do. But I do recommend posting your question in the most recent video that I put up. It's a lot easier for me to see. And some of you have emailed me. You can always email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. And you can do that 24 hours a day, actually. I might not answer it until the morning time, but anyway. But please refrain from asking my opinion about what somebody else is talking about, if that's okay. I really appreciate your understanding in this. I don't see it as my place to do that, so hopefully you understand. Now let's get into it. All right. First question. Do you pray to the Heavenly Father or to Maitreya? Why does it have to be either or? I feel it weird or wrong to pray to any other than Father. What is your belief on this matter? You fall off a ladder and your first thought was to cry out Maitreya, so just curious. Actually, Microcrystal, my first thought was to cuss like a sailor that had just pulled into port. So as the ladder was tipping and I was falling off, I was cussing. It didn't help me at the time, and then the only thing I had left to do was to cry out to Maitreya. And had I not been saved by Maitreya or one of the other masters, I would want to give him credit. If somebody else might have been the Master Jesus, I don't know, who stepped in there, swooped in and saved me. But I was gently laid on the concrete, and had they not done that, I would have been in a lot of pain, or no pain at all. Now I did learn my lesson, so I didn't need to die, or I didn't need to spend 6 weeks in traction to learn my lesson. Now I just ask somebody to help hold the ladder as I go up. and I think that's a lot of how saving can help, is you learn your lesson without having too much pain. Now, there are times when time permitted, when I have more time, I pray just generally to God. It just depends on what I'm praying for or about or whatever. Now, what I would say is pray to whoever you feel comfortable praying to. If it's Jesus, pray to Jesus. If it's God, pray to God. If it's the Father, pray to the Father. If it's Allah, pray to Allah, or whatever. It just depends on what your spiritual background is, really. And if you don't have a name that you put to the God, I sometimes just pray to the universe, or whatever you want to do, Now, my belief since you asked me my belief on this matter, on prayer, when I pray, I always say I pray and then I keep my little legs moving. So I don't expect God or Maitreya even, or Jesus, to do anything for me. I still have to do it, but they can aid me and help me along the way. And it's always seemed to work out better that way. There are times like when I'm falling off the ladder, he did save me, that kind of thing. So, it just depends. Might I also suggest, if you're interested, and it's totally up for everybody's consideration, but since Mike or Crystal, you're asking this question, I'm posing it to you too for your consideration. But if you go to the Share International website, they devoted a whole page to this. Okay, so it's the hand of Maitreya. It was one of the most extraordinary miracles that really went unnoticed by the mainstream news media, but over the past few decades, all the miracle signs, the UFOs, crop circles, healing waters, crosses of light and windows and so forth, this is right up there with it. But it's a hand that appeared on a mirror in a woman's apartment in Barcelona, Spain. And the woman's son is involved with the Share International group in Spain. So he knew about Maitreya, and he knew Ben and benjamincreme and so forth. So what happened was, this woman lived alone, and she went into her bathroom, and on the mirror was this handprint. And she goes, oh, that's weird. So she wipes it off. And then a few days later, she goes back and it's there. Now, if you look at the picture, which I don't have a picture on my site because benjamincreme requested that we don't put pictures of the hand on our social media sites like YouTube or Twitter, or tweet it out or put it on Facebook and so forth. He said it cheapens the purpose behind it, and I'm respecting his wishes on that. So go to the site if you want to see it. If you want the picture, you can even download a PDF file of it, and it's free to do it. But anyway, it looks like the Shroud of Turin. It doesn't look like a dirty handprint on a mirror. Now, this woman called her son, who knew about, Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. He called Ben. Ben asked his master. His master asked Maitreya. So there was, 4 or 5 different people involved in this, answering this question. Is this a miracle? And Maitreya said, yes, it is my hand. And, print on the mirror. And please do not tell your mother not to wipe it off again, because I guess he wouldn't have put it back up there if she had wiped it off a second time. But according to Maitreya himself, this is the closest that he can get to any one of us until he's out, known for who he is in the world. And he says himself that his help is for the asking. All you have to do is ask. And he even went so far as to say, be specific when asking the hand for help. And the times that I've been very specific and not generalizing my request or my prayer to the hand, I found that help has come. For instance, there was a story that I had, and it's in my Maitreya's playlist, where a Maitreya came and actually helped empty the trash of the building that I was cleaning. And when I started this YouTube channel, I wanted to talk about that story, and I could not remember the woman's name who saw Maitreya. And I asked the hand of Maitreya, is there any way that you can help me remember or the person's name, this woman's name? The next day, the very next day, she came walking into where I worked. And I hadn't seen this lady in years. And she comes walking in. I went, what is your name? And she goes, Carol. And I went, you used to work at the DOT, didn't you? And she said, yeah, I work somewhere else now on the other side of town or whatever. She just happened to come in where I worked. And so there was another time when a woman was in desperate need of $10,000. And she asked Maitreya's hand, is there anything you can do to help me with, and she was very specific about the $10,000. And a few days after that, her father called her out of the blue and just was in the middle of talking to her, just without her even asking, said, are you okay with money? Is everything good? And she said, well, no, actually, Dad, I need $10,000. And he goes, okay, fine. And he wrote her a check. So help comes in all different ways and packages and sizes and the way it looks. You just have to be aware of it. And it reminds me of my favorite joke, one of my favorite jokes. A very religious person was living next to this river, and the river started to rise, and because it was raining or whatever. And the water was getting up into the driveway, into the yard, and it was just going to continue to go up, and the person knew that it was going to continue to rise. So this person prayed to God, God, save me from the rising waters of the river. And here comes a person in a Jeep. Get in the back of the Jeep. I can take you to safety. Nope. God's got me covered. I'm good. Are you sure? Yeah. So then the guy drives away. The water gets even higher, right? And now a person in a boat, a bass boat comes. This joke has sound effects. Not very good ones. But anyway, get in the back of the boat. I can take you to safety. Nope. God's got me covered. All right. So then he takes off, right? And then finally, now the waters have gotten really high and the person's on the roof. They pray again, God, save me from the rising waters. And here comes the Coast Guard, in the helicopter. Hey, get in the basket. We can take you to safety. And nope. God's got me covered, right? Well, anyway, the person ends up drowning. Goes to heaven and looks at God and says, God, I prayed 3 times for you to save me. You never came. And he goes, yes, I sent a person in a Jeep, a boat, and a helicopter. It was your job to get into the boat, into the back of the Jeep, the back of the boat, or into the basket and get in the helicopter for to get safety. So pray and keep your little legs moving. That's the way I always look at it. So hopefully this helps. Now, a couple of us have asked questions about the rays. What are the rays? And so forth. And I wanted to. One person asked for a link. Now, what I would recommend, a couple of recommendations. Go to the Share International website. I'm sure there's information about the rays on it. Or the better thing to do, if you go to Amazon and you search for Benjamin Creme books, a lot of his books will come up. I've read every one of his books hundreds of times. And I would recommend starting with Maitreya's Mission Volume 2. He talks about the rays in a way. He's very in depth about it, but he's melts it down so much and breaks it down like a fraction so much that even if you had never heard of the rays before and you had an open mind and you read it, you would have a pretty good understanding of what the rays are by just reading it. And then if you really get into it, and you want to read it a little farther, then I would recommend going and searching for Alice Bailey books, where she talks about it. The Master DK, one of the masters, who's very, very, obviously very knowledgeable of the rays, but he's one of the more knowledgeable of the rays, even among the masters. And when he explains it, it sounds like a doctoral thesis about the rays. Very scientific, very specific, very cut and dry, but just very complex. And so he said he's not even writing it for people of today. He's writing it for people hundreds of years from now. So, good luck trying to understand it that way. I would recommend learning it from Benjamin Creme, because he takes what the Master DK says and breaks it down so easy that a novice could understand it, really. That's the best way. Now, somebody else talked about tapping into the rays, and we'll talk about that in a second. But in Maitreya's Mission, Volume 1, on page 197, there's a whole chapter about the rays, and this is how Benjamin Creme starts it. And I wanted to read the first paragraph, because I think he explains it better than I could ever possibly explain it. All right, here we go. And this is a general view of the 7 rays. Modern exoteric science has proved the ancient and fundamental esoteric axiom. There is nothing in the whole of the manifested universe but energies, in some relationship, each vibrating at a particular frequency. The esoteric science postulates 7 such streams of energy or rays, whose interaction at every conceivable frequency creates the solar systems, galaxies, and universes. The movement of these 7 rays of energy in spiraling cycles draws all being into and out of manifestation, and colors and saturates it with their own individual qualities and attributes. This is as true for a grain of sand as for a man or a solar system. Each is the expression of a life. So that's how Benjamin Creme described the rays. Now, in terms of tapping into the rays, we've all been tapping into the rays for a long time. Just most of us didn't even know that we didn't know, right? It affects everything. And what makes us unique is within our personality makeup, which is made up of not only the personality, but our mental body and our astral body, which is the big one, because most of us are focused in that and are polarized in that focus of the astral or the emotional sentient body. And then the last one is the physical body. And then there's the soul ray. Now, within the personality is what makes up the man or woman in incarnation. And depending upon the combination of any one of these 7 rays, on whether it's the personality or the mental or the physical, or the astral or the physical body, is what makes up the personality and how the person uses it. And everyone uses them differently. So even if somebody had the same rays in the same places in their personality, they're still going to use it differently than somebody else. That's what makes us unique. Okay, so the 7 rays go like this. So the first ray is the ray of power or will. So animals like elephants are on the first ray. Okay, great politicians like Abraham Lincoln were almost pure first ray. That's why he was able to do what he could do, which was keep the country together from totally splitting apart. Other politicians like Mao Zedong, the dictator in China back in 100 or so years ago, who took nearly 1 billion people at the time that were very superstitious and living thousands of years in the past and brought them into the 21st century. Only somebody who has that kind of will could have done that. Other politicians like Churchill were first ray. Now, Benjamin Creme was an artist, and he liked to talk about the Renaissance painters a lot. Michelangelo was a first ray. El Greco was a first ray. So when you look at their paintings, they're very powerful, and it's coming from that energy quality that they have of the first ray. Other rays like love, wisdom. Dogs are on the love, wisdom ray. So that's why you could literally leave for a minute. You go to your car, forget your keys, come back inside or whatever it is, or forget whatever you got, And it's like your dog's greeting you from coming back from war. I mean, it is, oh my gosh, my master's back, you know. Pure love, right? Well, that's the love wisdom, right? Masters like Maitreya or the Buddha were on the second ray. A teacher finds themselves, if that's your line of least resistance, being a teacher, usually is on the second ray. Artists like Raphael, Benjamin Creme talked about him a lot. If you looked at his paintings, they're very soft edges, very different quality than Michelangelo's paintings, because he was a second ray and Michelangelo was a first ray. You could see the difference even in their paintings. The third ray, which our planet is actually on the third ray, and the sun, our sun is actually on the second ray. That's why in the Bible it says God is love. But anyway, other solar systems, God is will, God is intelligence, God might be harmony, that kind of thing. But in this solar system, it's love. Now, third ray, cats are on the third ray. And Shakespeare, when he wrote The Spider and the Web, you know, oh, the tangled webs we weave, I think is the way he put it. He was trying to talk about one of the major glamours of the third ray, which they manipulate things and they manipulate people. The spider and the web, you know. China, their personality is on the third ray. They have a first ray soul, but their personality is on the third ray. But Benjamin Creme says that chefs, people who are chefs, have a tendency to have a lot of third ray in them. It's the kind of looking out for number one, the ray that looks out for number one better than all the other rays. You know, politicians are on the third ray a lot. And the fourth ray is the ray of harmony. And so artists can be found on all the rays, but they usually, like, let's say Leonardo da Vinci is or not Leonardo da Vinci, he's a fourth ray, but El Greco or Michelangelo was a first ray. Well, but they had fourth ray in their personality, which made them express that will quality in an artistic form, you know, where other people with the same first ray soul, like Abraham Lincoln, weren't necessarily artists, they were more politicians. So it just depends on kind of how the person is. So Mozart was almost pure fourth ray, and most artists have some fourth, or if you're creative and, you know, a writer or a painter or a musician or something, you have a lot of fourth ray in you. The fifth ray, concrete science, scientists are found on that ray, you know, a lot. And so I always look at, you know, you look at these NASA scientists that can write these equations, and it's perfect in terms of how they can get a rocket from here to the moon and back and so forth. Just the ability to be able to do that with gimbal theories and all that kind of stuff. It would take somebody that looks at life through a microscope. The problem is that they don't see the broader scheme of things. Now, a little side note, I talked about this before in a couple of videos, that in the not so distant future, there's going to be a group of scientists in France that scientifically prove in a lab that can be easily produced in other labs the existence of the human soul. And they'll do it scientifically in France. Now, the reason why it's going to be in France is because the soul ray for France is concrete knowledge or science. So, and then the sixth ray, which is the one that affects us all, because over the past 2,000 years, this ray has dominated all the other rays, is the ray of abstract idealism. So that ray brought us the Renaissance painters, but it also brought us the Salem witch trials and the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition and so forth. You know, so but the devotees found on that ray. Now, the flip side of it is, you know, you can be very zealot. You can be a zealot. You can be a devotee or to an ideal at the expense of other people's ideals. But the good qualities of the sixth ray is, and especially over the past 2,000 years, is it's given us a very strong sense of individual self. The idea of think therefore I am, or be yourself, or be your own person, and those kind of things, those thoughts didn't occur to people 2,000 years ago. It took all that sixth ray over 2,000 years to get us to the point where we see that. Now the problem is we are be yourself, you know, to the expense of other people. You know, now we're living in a world where 7 billion people want to be an aspiring emperor, you know, and you just can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So Which leads me to the next thing. The more constrained of all the rays and the more grounded of all the rays is the seventh ray of ceremonial order or magic. And so the energies of Aquarius are coming more from the seventh ray and will make things more practical in terms of their spiritual approach. So when people look at the return of the Christ as this mystical event where Jesus comes back from the clouds and the host of angels playing trumpets, that's all symbolic. The Christ is coming back in a very practical way because that's the energies of Aquarius. He's coming back to help us build the structures that reinforce humanity in us, which is justice, which is sharing the world's resources, which is treating us as a family. But rather than it being this mystical ideal, it will be grounded in the structures that we create in the future. And that's why that seventh ray is so, it'll start to come into more and more potency as the age of Aquarius starts to become more and more of where we're, the age in which we're living. So every day it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, to go back to the rays, if there's a reason why I put up the article from Benjamin Creme's master about glamour in the last video, and if you missed it or you want to hear it again, feel free to go back and listen to it again because it's very enlightening. When approaching, somebody talked about tapping into these rays. If you were to talk to Benjamin Creme, he would say you can't tap into the rays, but what's important is for you to take an objective and detached look at yourself in your glamours in relationship to these rays, because these rays all have lines of least resistance. And because humanity is imperfect, and we're all imperfect, every one of us without exception has glamour. And so it just depends on what ray we're on, which glamours we more than likely have. So if you look at it and go, oh my gosh, I'm lazy, it takes a fire down to my butt to get me motivated to do anything. And then once I get going, I can knock it all out. Well, that's a fourth ray quality. If you find yourself very dogmatic at the expense of others, or your ideal is better than others, and if you're not a Republican, I'm a Republican. If you're not a Republican, well, then you're un-American. It's more than likely a six-ray glamour. But the important thing is to look at, when it comes to glamours, the most important thing, there's a reason why the masters say someone has a glamour, a country has a glamour. Just the fact that you have it proves that it's not you. So it's not personal that you and I and everybody have these glamours. It's just the phase of the point in humanity in which we are today. So its most important thing is, rather than trying to tap into these rays, is to look and psychoanalyze yourself in a very detached, objective way and start to look at it. And so it's hard, it's painful. For some of it's near impossible probably to do that objectively. But every one of these masters, without exception, is free of glamour. And the only way that they did it was they had to look at themselves and experience the pain and the agony of realizing the unreality in the way that they think and feel. And it's painful, especially if you really believe that your feelings are real, And so it can be very, very disturbing. But that's the most important thing that we could do. One of the masters, the Master TK, said the most important service that any one of us could do was to go basically move our focus from the emotions into the mind. Because when you do that, you free yourself from glamour. And so that message that Benjamin Creme's master wrote about glamour, you could probably listen to it every day of your life, and it would change your life if you really applied it, because you have to look at yourself. We all do, have to look at ourselves objectively, because we all, quote unquote, have glamour. And this is how it relates to the rays, really. And so each ray is divine on the highest level, but because humanity is imperfect, we are not manifesting the virtues of those rays. By and large, we're manifesting the vices or the inadequacies of having those rays. I do hope this helps. And again, it's a broad topic about the rays, and the best thing to do is to read it in Benjamin Creme's books. He can talk about it a lot better than I can. So I hope this helps, and I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.